Hello and welcome to BloombergQuint. You're watching the fine print. Destocking ahead of July 1st, dent in profit margins, supply chain bottlenecks. The goods and services tax regime has impacted India Inc. in more ways than one. Add to this, technology, implementation awareness, clarity on tax administration continue to be a challenge. But the government's euphoria continues, with the Prime Minister calling the goods and services tax regime not just a tax but a social reform. After the first month of the GST implementation, is that how corporate India is looking at it too? To answer that, I have with me V.S. Parthasarathy, Group CFO at Mahindra & Mahindra, and Ritesh Kanodia, Indirect Tax Partner at Dhruva Advisors. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Mr. Parthasarathy, the Prime Minister in his recent radio broadcast, Man Ki Baat, said that GST is more than just a tax reform, it ushers in a new culture. Do you agree with it? And if yes, what has that culture change meant for M&M, its vendors and its distributors?
Good evening and thank you. GST in a sense is goods and service tax, but it is not just goods and service tax. It's a change in the way we've been doing business, and I think that's where Mr. Modi is calling is ushering in a new era. Just look at the way we've been thinking about business. Is where do I put where the incentives come from, or where is the fiscal benefit going to do? What are the various blocks that I have to cross in order to do? One of the biggest benefits I saw was somebody called me from, it was about 10 o'clock in the morning, and he called me on the first, and he said, you know what, I'm driving through and I don't have any post to cross, and I don't have to wait for 4 hours across every post. I think things will not show as dramatically as the gentleman who called me made it out to be, but over a period of time.
But the long queues vanished, right, in the first week itself.
Yeah, if that is what we assure, that we can speed up. And if you talked about output of any business organization as the return they make and the velocity with which you make, we call it ROC. If you have a return on sales and the velocity multiplied becomes ROC, and if you can turn around things more, look at what the productivity of India can go up. Sure. If we can improve this by say twice, then suddenly our ROCE for India should be a very large number. And that is what is the assurance would mean. If I say 10 ROS or return on sales, I'm a CFO, right? I'm allowed to quote these figures. Okay, so 10 ROS, and if you say asset turn is 2, and it's a 20% ROC. If 10 remains 10 and 2 I can move to 4, then it's 40% ROC. And suddenly you see the return, which is kind of world class. And I think that's what he's trying to do in a way, in a CFO's language.
Sure, but big groups like yours, Mr. Parthasarathy, understand this very well. But we're not just talking about large companies here. We are talking about thousands of vendors that your group deals with and distributors on the other side. What has their preparedness meant for the group, and are they up to speed with where the group wants them to be?
So what you're telling me is ये इश्क नहीं आसान बस इतना समझ लीजिए. So हम पहले से समझ गए थे.
Good for you, yes.
So one of the things that we did is about a year and a half back, we said we must prepare for this, and here we cannot be only M&M. It has to be M&M and its ecosystems. Okay, so we worked with our vendors, with our suppliers, with our dealers, and said, how can we make this a comprehensive one? So it also helped us when we went to SAP and said, let's develop an output together. Right. So I can proudly say that I was a party to the development of GST SAP version. I mean, they may want to acknowledge that.
And give you some part of the royalty.
Being a CFO, that's the next question. So they may want to say, but I think they will acknowledge they will play a very good part in the development. So we developed the software. We in fact developed another software called Plan B, which we can use in-house if SAP does not come up quickly. And what we thought is this is also something that can give free to my vendors and suppliers in case they don't have an SAP or an equivalent one version which is there. So we built redundancies, we built contingency plans, and we worked. So I'm delighted with my GST teams who thought about all these aspects. So when on 1st July or just before 1st July, I said I don't agree and 1st of May that we are ready. Can I see one stress demonstration of this with our vendors and suppliers? They told me that all the ecosystem is not available with the government, but our version we can test. And they came back and said, so many people, we did it with 200 vendors and dealers, and it's working well. Okay. So 1st July when it was, I didn't call them, I congratulated them, and my MD congratulated them one day in advance because we were not worried that it will not work. We were very clear it will work very seamlessly, and it did. And we've not seen a problem. All our vendors, those who have full systems, we know what to do, what they should do. Those who don't have full system, we know what to do. How the invoice, what are the items in invoice which needs to be captured in the entire system. Now we are still worried that the comprehensive cycle with the government has not gone through. So we'll have another stress around second week of August when we file in the first returns. And I'm sure you'll have a lot to share about that. But once we count the hump, we would have gone through that first phase. Then our next problem will be annual assessment. But coming back, except for the transition issue, which remains a real issue for us, I think from a other point of view and from a long-term point of view, this is revolutionary.
Okay, I'll come back to the transition issues, Mr. Parthasarathy. Ritesh, taking cue from the colorful idiom that Mr. Parthasarathy quoted, this aag ka darya that everybody has to cross, not everybody would have been as prepared as, the M&Ms or the HULs of the world, right? We knew that, there are going to be technology issues, not all vendors and distributors will be prepared. Give me a flavor of what sort of problems have your clients come to you with, and what has been the experience in the first month?
See, I would say kudos to the Mahindra group that they were all well prepared and ready. But experience of all clients have not been so good on GST. We have multiple clients who are probably still not ready on invoice printing until now. The reason is, at one end, yes, GST has gone live on 1st July. I think what is missing is, the industry related issues, which got, if you remember, the committee got constituted quite late in the day. There are many sectors where you have multiple complications.
Did anything come out of that committee? It was set up for 10 sectors, right? And
it is there, and they are still taking representations. What we expected was that once it goes live on 1st July, a proper detailed guidance note would come out in terms of, so like for example, transition provisions. Everybody knows that certain provisions have been missed out. Like just to give you a simple example, reverse charge paid on 5th of July. How do we need to take credit? Now, when clients are pursuing us in terms of saying that, please tell us what is the way forward. As advisors, we are also not very sure.
But can't you take credit in the summary returns?
No, so the transition provision doesn't allow you to take credit of services which were rendered in June. The government has acknowledged that this has been missed out. What could have been better was a very quick solution to this problem rather than waiting for more than a month, because we've told our clients that keep your invoices on hold right now. By law, the law allows you to make the reverse charge payment for, let's say, invoices received in the month of July. It was very natural that if somebody provides you services in June, it is not possible for everybody to close on 30th June and give you all the invoices in June. It was expected that they would come in July. What is the provision under the law which allows you to make that payment of tax even in the month of August? Service tax as a law is gone. Can I make those payments in the month of August? The answer as of now is no. So it's not about the law per se. Everybody understands the benefit of GST. Everybody understands that in a B2B business, everything is available as credit. Litigation would go down substantially. What people are worried about is taking positions, and many positions are being taken today, whether on valuation, whether on classification.
Yes, classification is one issue, right? We all anticipated that it will throw up challenges because...
And it's throwing up multiple challenges.
Okay, can you give us
So for example, we were dealing with one client very recently and very, very innovative, and in fact it relates to the business which Mahindra & Mahindra does. So truck, for example, leasing of trucks to, so one of the client is an NBFC who is leasing trucks to GTA.
Okay.
And they came out with a issue that if I'm going to lease trucks to a GTA, there was an exemption under service tax which says that hiring of trucks by GTA is exempt.
Right.
So they've said even leasing is exempt because there is now no differentiation between goods and services. So one entry was a transfer of right to use, another was a hiring. What is the distinction between leasing and hiring? If you look at the legislative intent, truck owners were given this exemption and not leasing companies. Otherwise, there would be a disparity. If a GTA buys truck, he would pay actually at probably 43%. And if a GTA leases truck, he would actually pay no tax. So, this kind of where companies are forcing their service providers to take a call. Like recently, we were dealing with an issue of what is mobile and immobile. So if you, let's say, set up an office, furniture, fixtures, etc., all the big providers are raising you a works contract invoice. Now there is a Supreme Court judgment in solid engineering work which says that anything which can be dismantled and moved is not immobile, it is mobile.
But then are you not inviting the tax administration to come and question you at the assessment time?
See, there is going to be a lot of questioning, and the worry is that the tax office is not going to come now. They would probably come after 3 or 4 years. And at that point in time, as a provider, I would have no recourse to the customer.
Okay.
So, that's a very worrisome point. So, aspects which are worrying is, even though a customer is eligible to take credit, am I actually getting into a litigation? Some cases, even credit is not available.
Okay.
And that's more endangering, because I would have said simply charge 28% and move ahead and take credit. What is the issue involved? So, those kind of issues, like we were dealing with a metro rail project, large metro rail project. So this was like a composite supply for setting up a ticketing system. Now again, I can move that ticketing system anywhere I want to, and it's mobile. So is it a mixed supply? Is it a composite supply? Because by works contract definition, it doesn't remain mobile. So what is the clarity on all of these issues? Some of my clients coming and asking me, my work got done. So EPC contractors, work got done pre-30th June. I got my certification in July. What do I do? So there are a lot of such open points, and I could probably list 100 of them if I sit.
Sure.
And
but is Mr. Parthasarathy, the various examples that Ritesh pointed out, is litigation the only way we are going to be solving these, or industry is in conversation with the government on some of these issues?
Yeah. So I think I suppose those who kind of come out issues with those issues will come up, and those issues will need to be discussed and resolved. Let me take one example which he quoted and one which I have in terms of saying how I see things pan out. I certainly don't hope not that we wait for 3 years to discuss any of this. I don't think that's the intent of the government, and I don't think that's the intent of any industry player.
Everybody
Because,
wants certainty.
certainty.
Yes.
So first and foremost is just to give that when these second-hand cars were being sold, the first thing was that you have to pay 43% or 29% or whatever is the rate of the new car. The same thing you have to pay. Now obviously this kills the entire second-hand industry, and if it does, it kills the entire auto industry in a sense. So a quick representation was made by the CIAM and TMA, all the people who are involved in this, and the government saw merit immediately, and they said, okay, now we are not going to charge 43 or 28 or whatever percent on the entire value. You just have to charge on the value addition, which means profit.
Margin.
Yeah, and only the margin. So this very quickly resolved what it threatened to be an industry killing move to a painful move. Yeah, there is some pain, but that's something at least we can work forward with. Now it's not stopped as that. CIAM would like to, our TMA would like to represent to the government, and which they've already done, to say can it be a lower percentage on all second-hand vehicle for the value addition portion. Keep it on value addition, but don't charge this, and don't charge differentiation rate, because after it has become used, it loses the relevantiation of the bifurcation which needs to be done. So this is an important differentiation which one was thinking about. Yeah. So one of the things that other things that the second thing that they said that they will do is for them to then see what they will do with the GST on this. Okay. So now what is solved? What is solved is It is not 100% value on which they will levy, that's sorted. It's now only on the value addition is sorted. But whether it will be some other percent except differentiated rates, theirs as for 5%, but government may say something else. So it's still in the thing. And how much time has passed? We started on 1st July, almost not knowing where it's going.
But rates, I
Yeah.
think, is an easier problem to solve. I'm not saying it's
I
not
just
difficult.
wanted to add one
Sure.
nuance over here. Yes, the government was very forthcoming in issuing this circular. The only challenge is, as you rightly pointed out, the law uses the word second-hand dealer. Now, if a company person sells a second-hand car, and then the other issue is, yes, logically you shouldn't have charged me GST on the full value because I'm not taking any credit. But when you talk about a second-hand car, then even a company selling a car should not be liable to GST on the other than the
Correct.
margin.
I think there will be many such things
Yes.
which will
Sure.
come. The second thing is about leasing.
Right.
We have an NBFC in our group, and earlier leasing was not an option for many customers across many industries. We think that over a period leasing will become a very attractive Indian option. Today it doesn't exist. Leasing as an industry is a very thin, non-existent industry. So, and I think leasing has a bright future if we get all these things started and going. So, in a sense, tomorrow will we have a bigger leasing industry than we had in the past? My answer is certainly yes. Will there be nuances which needs to be sorted? The answer is yes, but I think there are representation being made, they're being taken up, and those issues which are specific. See, one thing is certain, we are also working on some cases. For example, what happens to IPS which were given under the old regime? How does that get implemented in the new regime? What is the CST portion? So I think this will get resolved over the next few weeks, if not few months. Okay? So it hopefully will get resolved. But the broader intent of this and use cases clarify.
Right.
Remember when Ind AS came, everybody first said, oh my God, the world has collapsed. Nothing collapses.
Well, I mean,
just-
that sort of apprehension and fear comes with every big change.
Yeah, change. And so
Right.
therefore that is natural. And for smaller companies, and you have to remember out of my 180 odd companies I have, many of them are 20, 50, 100 crore kind of companies. So, you know, you should not think of one as one big company. And when we operate in 20 industries, my team is giving inputs to all the 20 industries, and there are many questions in many of the industry, but I hope in the next,
Interesting.
I'm very optimistic things can get easily sorted out in this regime by dialogue and very quickly. And I'm not don't want to take away anything from what Ritesh is saying, because he represents
I completely relate to and acknowledge what Mr. Parthasarathy is saying, that it could get resolved by dialogue. The only point which
or Twitter. The government is very active on Twitter too nowadays.
the larger issue is, see, the point is today government is definitely coming forth with a very, very friendly approach where they are trying to clarify as many things as possible. The only worrying factor is that we are not dealing with one government, we are dealing with two governments.
The state
And the modus of clarification has to be very robust. So, for example, there were press notes which were released. There were Twitter clarification which were released. I don't know if you're aware or not. The press note actually got challenged constitutionally to say that what is the legal binding of a press note in a judgment for lawyers, where they questioned about what is the applicability to us.
The reverse charge
yes,
order that
the government was very fast to issue a press note, and
Right.
the petition got modified to say that what's the validity.
Right.
Today, yes, we believe that the government wants to clarify, and many clarifications are actually towards in the direction of being SSE friendly. The point is that what happens 3 years, 4 years down the line? Can you take support from this Twitter clarifications? Can you take support from this press notes?
I don't know, somebody was mentioning to me earlier in the day that there is, and I'm yet to find that tweet, let me put that out as a disclaimer, that they've clarified that a slum sale will also attract GST. Is that correct? Have you also looked at that one?
If I have read the law correctly, the answer is no.
Right.
The question is whether for a slum sale do you need to reverse credit, which is again an open issue pending from the service tax laws.
So these clarifications will come, and part of the answer is not to rely on a Twitter. Once you get a clarification in Twitter, is to kind of go and they issue it either as a clarificatory note are as
Yes.
equivalent
Yeah,
to
because
whatever.
there is no binding value of that in the court.
There is a basic thing is it's a way to assert
Sure.
as a first level of communication, and you cannot take communication equal to law.
Correct.
You have to get the legal
Okay, sure,
amendment.
sure.
And I'm sure the government also wants it because nobody wants non-clarity.
No, of course
there,
it
right?
helps, right? The masterclass that
Yes.
they've been holding, the clarifications on Twitter they've been giving, I'm sure it sort of helps small businesses who don't have big associations to represent them, right? Mr. Parthasarathy, within a week of GST implementation, we saw automakers across the board cutting prices, right? On the other sort of verticals that M&M sort of operates in, what is the sense, can you give me a sense of what impact has it had on costs and consequently on pricing?
So let me kind of take 2 points here. One is on the overall what impact it had and transition. You didn't
Sure.
ask the question. I'm bringing.
No, I was
that
coming to
nuance.
it, but please go on.
But yeah, but I'm bringing the nuance. First is when it comes to manufacturing. By and large, the earlier tax rates have been followed with some benefits, some hits, but it is in a very small range. Automobile is in the benefit category, except for couple, like you heard,
Hybrids, yeah.
Yeah, it had an impact, except for that, and consequently, manufacturers have passed that on. When it came to service industry, by and large, there was a hit, marginal, but are little larger depending on where they stood versus the new rate. But generally, it's been an upward bias.
Right.
Yeah, because they were wanting to take 16 to 18 before they announced this, but it was not taken. Therefore, there is a marginal hit. So all my service company, whether it's banks, etc., now the tax that they're going to charge to the customer is going to be higher. So is if I go to a haircutting salon, that's going to be higher as well. So even to so services by
Somewhere
and
you are
large.
paying too.
Only somewhere, but this is an adjustment which will happen. It has two tendencies: to increase price and increase inflation, but that's a natural consequence of this. The third is the IT sector. I don't think there will be a major change in what they are doing, but the administrative complexities just went up 10x for them to manage this situation. So these are the three broad impacts as I see. Manufacturing by and large neutral to slightly positive, and they've all therefore started with the positive momentum. Service where it's going to be slightly negative for the consumer, and that's also will get passed on straight away because it's plus tax. And third is IT, where I don't think rates will matter, but the way the administrative complexity, just somebody was pointing out, I have to do 768 returns that I have to file in a year. So these are very big numbers. So administratively tough, but nothing.
But that will add to your cost?
Anything which is administrative also has a cost element to it. But hopefully they will manage it in things, because after all they're giving IT to the world, so they can do some automation amongst themselves as well. Okay, so this is the thing. On the transition side, I think service and this, because it's forward looking, there is nothing too big to carry forward, and with exceptions, by and large there the impact is future. In the manufacturing, because of the stocks and manufacturer stocks and dealer stocks, there is an impact. Okay, and
what sort of comfort have you given to your dealers?
So there is always this comfort saying that whatever, if you are suffering any loss in a sense, then I have to step up to it, right? And this is the general what the industry is given. I'm not specifically talking about M&M because I'm on the silent zone with my board meeting on the 3rd and 4th of this month. So broadly there is an hit to the dealer and to the manufacturer and overall to the industry, and that's something which is a dialogue going on between various bodies and the government of saying how do we minimize or zeroize this impact.
We were before GST kicked in, we were speaking to some of the dealers, say in Kolkata, in Allahabad, and the pain point there was less on vehicles, but more on spare parts and accessories, because in these towns maybe the stock that they carry from is 1 year or 2 year or 3 year old, on which, as Ritesh would explain further, you can't get the input tax credit, right? again, I'm not talking specifically about M&M, but have those conversations yielded any fruitful results in terms of companies being able to share some of those losses?
Yeah. So first and foremost is, I think we are all in it together.
Sure.
So the dealer, and I'm making a general comment on behalf of the industry, that the dealer and manufacturer will have to sit together to figure out what is the net impact and what can we represent to government and get relief and the balance. Okay. You know that they had earlier said that you needed documents, but now without documents you can get certain amount of credit back. Easier in finished goods and more difficult in spare parts, but principally that's a stand that they've taken. Clarification pending. Okay, but possible. Now coming to that, after that there will still be some losses because you can't get the full credit. And what is the new tax? In places like tractors, the rates have actually gone up. Tractor spare parts, because you don't know what it falls into.
Right.
Yeah. So there also there is dialogue going on, and hopefully all these are things which are pending. Now to estimate and re-estimate is one way. The first one is to implement and have some principle-based discussion both with the government and the dealer is the second way. I think the industry is taking a pragmatic step of discussing with the government on one end and assuaging the dealer on the other.
Okay. Ritesh, I'm not sort of belittling any of the problems that your clients have come to you with, but if you were to call out top 3 areas that where industry needs immediate sort of clarification, what would those be?
So I think the top priority would be transition related issues. So whether in terms of what do they need to exactly do, how do they need to take their credits, what is available, what is not available, because industries are currently struggling with arriving at net impact. So anti-profiteering, which is really government is very keen to focus on anti-profiteering if somebody is not passing on the benefit. The challenge is everybody actually aware of what benefits are there in the system at all? So like for example, you talk about incentive free zones, which was mentioned just a few minutes back. There is very less clarity on how it's going to operate. So the government has said 58% would be refunded, but what are the parameters? Where is the notification and how is it going to function? So what happens to those benefits which accrue to that particular industry zone?
Sure.
The other thing is, in terms of clarity on rates and classification, because the business is not going to stop. So which means that people are going to.
But how do you solve this rates problem? Because it was earlier there even in the VAT regime, if I'm correct.
So
right?
let me put it in this manner that we are talking about 2 sets of businesses, B2B and B2C. As far as B2B is concerned, a credit is eligible and nobody would want to take a risk because of the eligibility of credit. A B2C is where there are larger complications. What would happen is typically that in a B2B scenario, and see, I may go and invoice at a particular rate. Let us say I took a position of 18%, tomorrow it turns out to be 28 or 43. It's a revenue neutral situation. So there have to be at least some statement made that, if it is revenue neutral, considering that there is so many issues and nuances, I would not ask you to pay interest. The penalty should not apply. If I go to a court and argue that the law was unclear, I would probably get off the penalty. But interest is one factor, and the other issue is the cash flow issue.
Sure.
Because I would be paying a differential of 10% to the government and my customer might not pay me back. Because if the government is able to prove fraud suppression, credit is also not available. As far as B2C is concerned, if I take an aggressive view and the government wants to avoid inflation, what I would do is end up charging higher to the customer, and the customer would be at a loss.
Sure, okay.
So, I think the rate and classification is another very crucial element where the government needs to come out with a lot more clarity on. Nobody wants to avoid tax. People, and I've seen all my clients saying that, give me the correct rate of tax and we are more than willing to comply.
Sure.
The question is, what I should not end up paying more than what I was expected to do.
Okay, so transition is one, rates and classification is
and the third largest issue would be, opening up of the GST network where
I was going to come to it. 24 July is what the GST chairman said, right? That industry can start uploading invoices. Has that happened?
No, so 20th would be my summary return filing. Where
correct, but offline utility tool was supposed to be up and running,
Offline utility tool
right?
has been released, but I am not very sure how many of the people would have tested, because many people are still struggling with the IT implementation per se. So there is, in fact, I would just want to mention one provision which is creating a nightmare for most is the URD.
Okay.
People don't understand, companies are not clear of how to implement this provision in the first place.
Okay.
So somebody raising a question that I went to the market and bought flowers for Ganpati Puja. Do I need to pay URD? So those kind of provisions which are so onerous.
URD, for the
Should-
benefit of our viewers, unregistered
Unregistered dealer.
Yeah.
So I think, see, all this can be implemented. It's only that let the law get settled down. It's a matter of phase, before which you can, get everything on board. Like invoice-wise return filing, maybe you can postpone it to April. We were today taking credit basis invoices.
Right.
What industry is struggling with is too many things being brought at one time, where it is making at least mid-sector companies to comply. Like for example, now while we are not into the complete thick of things, and as far as GST is concerned, now there is a great deal of confusion on way bills,
Right.
e-way bills. How is it going to be implemented? What is going to be done, etc., etc. So maybe a stepwise approach. Like for example, credit matching was there in VAT, but it was introduced in a phased manner. And what would be beneficial is bring some of these provisions at a later stage.
Okay.
Let people get a sense of what GST is all about. Let them get into this, and then you bring everything one by one, so that there is no chaos, at least in terms of.
Okay, to sum up, transition issues, rates and classification, and probably business with unregistered dealers.
So yeah.
Mr. Parthasarathy, Ritesh briefly touched upon this. The e-way bill mechanism is still not in place, and the rules will be, released in a month or two, whenever. And in the interim, each of the states have released the specific documents that all that require for you to pass through those states. Is that creating any issues so far, or is it working smoothly?
There are some issues here and there, but nothing that disrupts the entire supply chain. We are resolving things as we are going. And like I said, this is not one legislation and everything is smooth on this. There are states involved, there are municipalities involved, and all of them had ecosystems which are being dismantled.
Had a
through
stake
this
in it.
And had a stake in it. So it's important to kind of work through your way to it. I wouldn't say there are no issues. I wouldn't say that something stopped. Business is still continuing, and as they say, thoda hai, thode ki zarurat hai.
Well, on that note, thank you, Mr. Parthasarathy, Ritesh, for joining us, and thank you so much for watching.